This is what I want to do with Mike Snatchers. I want to sign him to his 360 deal.
Do a 720 deal then.
Just got my groove back.
Hey, this is Mike Snatchers back with another beat breakdown for my second Baauer Bot Battle win. If you didn't know, Baauer's been streaming on Twitch recently and hosting beat battles every other week. So if you are a producer and you're interested in beat battles, or if you're just someone interested in electronic music, you really should come check out his streams. They're hilarious, ton of fun. You just got to watch. All right, let's get to the beat breakdown. So let's start by listening to a little bit of this sample here. So this is a Devil's Mix, which is a track without drums, which is really nice if we're going to be sampling it. However, there are some overlapping elements in here, like different synths, some smaller percussive elements like birds, whistles, and finger snaps. And those things can't really easily be extracted from each other in this track. So that's just something that we're going to have to work around as we work on this beat. So when I heard this sample, for whatever reason, I thought of this Duckworth track, Coming Closer, probably because I've just been listening to a lot of Duckworth this year. But I felt like I could take this sample and rework it into sort of a flip of that track. Can't really play it here on YouTube without getting copyright strike, but you should definitely go check it out, listen to it, and I'm sure you'll be able to hear that kind of influence that it has on the final product of this beat. So when I start working on something, I go back and forth a lot between either starting with the melody first or starting with the drums. Since I already had a concept for this piece, I went ahead and started with the melody. So let's hear what kind of all those tonal elements sound like by themselves. So you can hear a lot of the original sample in that, and I also went and directly took some samples from that Duckworth track that I was talking about before, something like that, and mixed it in kind of just an interesting percussive way with all these other pieces and bits. I really like working with audio directly like this because I can actually see where a piece starts and stops rather than working with MIDI and kind of sometimes having issues with overlapping parts. And that's especially important in this track that I made, considering that I didn't really EQ any of the bass out of any of these samples. A lot of the sub bass that you're hearing in this was already baked into this track, and I didn't like write new sub bass on top of it. I wanted it all just to be kind of organic the way it came. And that can present issues when things are overlapping with each other. You really don't want like low frequencies clashing with each other. So when you're taking audio like this and chopping it up bit by bit and making sure that little pieces don't overlap, you're avoiding that problem altogether. Something else in this section that makes it a little bit more interesting is that I played a lot with the panning of elements, left, right, and center. Something that helps is that I have something right on the downbeat, dead in the middle, and then throughout the rest of the bar, there's elements that jump from right to left and give that kind of bouncing around feeling in your ears that you get. This does include the bass, and I know typically the advice given is to leave bass in mono always, don't do panning of that. But in this case, again, it actually works because of the sort of individual elements and how they line up and no overlapping things that I kind of mentioned before. So there's no real issue. You can listen to it in mono even to check. Really, it's just a cool effect. So a little later on in the track, I took that melody that I wrote before and just doubled it an octave up. It was really easy to do that because the original sample had essentially the same synth lower and higher, so I could just take snippets from different parts of it and combine them together. And it sounds like this. Moving on to the drums here, here's what they sound like by themselves in that first section. Not a whole lot going on there. And really you don't need a whole lot going on because as you heard before, those tonal elements have a lot of their own rhythm and a lot of complexity in and of themselves. So if you start adding too much in the drums and adding too many like weird perks or complicated elements, things are just gonna get messy really fast. Okay, I'll show you how I made this kick here. So I started with a kick that I really liked the attack of. It's a really nice kick on its own, but I turned on this drum bus. You can hear a big difference there. So what I played with mostly is this boom setting over here. If you crank it all the way, you'll hear that it kind of turns it more into an 808. And you can adjust the frequency of this to actually get the note that you want. And when you're close, you find this little button down here will set it perfectly in tune for you. So all you have to do then is just kind of dial this back to get the release to where you want it. And then I bounce that out and turn that into my final kick, which is great. So I don't always tune my kicks. I don't feel like it's necessary all the time. In this case, since we do have just a lot of sub bass jumping around in different ways, I felt like I could tune this kick to like a major fifth above where the root note is in that bass. So it's essentially 7 semitones up. And that makes sure that it didn't really clash with anything. There's no real phasing issues either with that. So together, the kick and all those tonal elements from before sound like this. You can tell it just kind of fits right in. And to be honest, I made that kick and wrote it kind of in tandem when I was making the rhythm of those other elements. So I knew that they weren't going to overlap or have any issues. All right, moving forward. In this next section, we add a few more elements to the drums, but nothing gets too complex. One of the new elements we have here is the shaker, which emphasizes the offbeats. And I want to show you this kind of cool effect that I use to emphasize offbeats either on shakers or Foley loops or any other percussive loop. I'm using Shaper Box, which is typically used just for volume automation, and a lot of people use it for side chaining. I'm using a very similar sort of side chain curve here, which takes down the volume at the beginning of a beat, and on the end or the second half of the beat, the volume is all the way up. So that means that the offbeats are emphasized while the downbeats are minimized. And you can kind of change the mix of this, see how loud or soft you want. But if you turn this off, you can hear that all the downbeats are really harsh and really loud. And that really kind of messes with the bounce of a track. When you turn this on, it sounds way better and it fits better into that groove. If you don't have Shaper Box, you can get a similar effect by using the Auto Pan plugin in Ableton. If you play with this shape over here, make sure the rate is set to quarter notes, you can hear. You can play with the amount and you get a similar effect. Shaper Box just gives you a little bit finer control, so I can make sure the volume is all the way up as soon as it hits that offbeat. But this comes free with Ableton and it works almost just as well. Last thing I wanted to talk about in this beat are some of the fills and pullbacks that we have. For example, I have this one over here. And then over here I have something similar.
Just got my groove back.
Basically doing the same thing in both instances, which is going through a beat or two before there's a new transition or a new section and muting elements so that there's just kind of this blank space, and then I can fill it in with other ones that are brand new or kind of unexpected. In this case, it's kind of a weird voice sound, but also using these sort of toms that I found here for a fill. And then over here, it's the same sort of thing, except just one cool little vocal track.
Just got my groove back.
All right, here's the beat all together.
Just got my groove back.
All right, that's all I got for this breakdown. If you're interested in a full version of this beat, you can find a link in the description to my SoundCloud where you can download it. Thanks to Baauer for putting this on, and a huge shout out to everyone in his community who supported me and my music. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching.